about that time of year when everyone's gotten their tomato starts and it's about time to put it in the garden. Today we're going to talk about how, and more importantly when, to transplant your tomatoes into your raised bed or garden. The when is the most important part up here in the Pacific Northwest. We've got a pretty marginal climate when it comes to growing tomatoes, so we need to make sure we do everything we can to give these guys a chance to produce for us. The when is dictated by the weather. You're going to want to go on your computer or pull out your phone and make sure you've got nighttime temperatures above 50 degrees before you're transplanting your tomatoes into your garden. If it goes any colder during the night, it could shock the tomatoes, and if it doesn't kill them, it's certainly going to stunt them, which is going to keep them from producing like you want to. It's also important that you harden off the tomatoes really well before you transplant them. I spent about the last 2 weeks bringing these outside every day for a few hours, letting them get some sun, and then bringing them back in at night. Over the course of that 2 weeks, I've left them out a little bit longer and a little bit longer each day until by the end of the 2 weeks they were spending the entire night outside. So started with about 2 hours the first day, 3 or 4 hours the second day, so on until they can survive all the way through the night outside. And this is important. If you don't harden off your tomatoes and just put them in your garden, the first full day of sun is going to shock the tomatoes. They're going to wilt, they're going to lose all their moisture, they're not prepared to be out in the elements, and if it doesn't kill them, it's certainly going to stunt the growth of the tomatoes, just like if you put them out before it got warm enough. So with that in mind, let's get ready to transplant. Now, we prepared these beds a few weeks ago, so it should be pretty nutrient rich. We fertilized it, we added some organic matter, and we tilled it up really nice. But what I like to do when I put my tomatoes in is put a big handful or a small scoop of fertilizer just on top of where my hole is going to be. So when I dig this up, it's going to mix up and it's not going to be too potent on the roots of the tomato. So then you can grab a trowel, or you can just do this with your hand. Dig a hole big enough for the tomato. And I like to plant my tomatoes nice and deep. So I'm going to dig a hole plenty deep for the tomato to go. Now, as you can see, the tomato is just in a 4-inch pot, so it's not a very big root ball. But what we're going to do is plant it as deep as we can. So we're going to be planting it up on the stem. So first thing we need to do is prick off a lot of these side shoots so that all we have left is the stem. And you can go up as high as you want to, because the stem will actually sprout roots and it will make it stronger underground and it will provide more support and more nutrients to the stem that's above the ground. So as you can see, we're probably going to plant it about 4 or 5 inches deep below the root. You see this has a pretty good root ball. It's fairly root bound. You don't have to be very gentle with tomato roots. They can take a punishing, and what we're trying to do is just spread them out a little bit so that the roots can expand. And then we have that compost mixed into the dirt because we put it on top of our hole before we started digging it. And there you have it. Now, I like to mound the stem just a little bit and create a well, or a moat, if you will, around the tomato. And what this is going to do is it's going to direct the water about maybe 6 inches from the stem on each side. It's going to encourage the roots to come out, and it's not going to drown our stem when we water it every time. So try to mount it up just a little bit at the stem and then create a well all the way around. And then we like to use the eyeball method. You want to push as hard on the soil as you would your own eyeball, not any harder. And there we go. We've got our first tomato transplanted in. Now, I've got a few more tomatoes that I'm going to put throughout the rest of this box, so I'm going to get that all those transplants in, and then we're going to water them in really well. And now we're going to give them a really good soaking. Now, it did rain here a few days ago, so I probably don't need to really drown them. I just want to make sure I'm getting the top 4 or 5 inches of soil saturated with water to make sure that these guys, the roots that we just separated out, have plenty of moisture to keep these guys growing. Now that they've been watered in, this is also the time that you're going to put on a tomato cage or support of some kind. Now you don't need to do that with these tomatoes. Depending on your variety you may, but you want to make sure you check and see on your variety what it needs. But I like to do it here in the Northwest because we live in a very windy area, and even though the stems could support themselves, I like to give them something to lean on when big gusts of wind come by. I'm also going to put these big hoops around them because it's going to create about a box that I can lay a net over so that no birds get to any of our tomatoes, and it's going to protect them from all those types of pests. So there you have it. That's how we're going to have those tomatoes growing this season. Check back often and we'll do some updates on these tomatoes, and we'll be providing some more tips and tricks for gardening in the Northwest. Thanks.